He is a partner of Deloitte, who is going to be presented the topic, the implications of the USMCA in Mexico and in Canada. Roberto is a foreign trained partner with experience with clients from various sectors such as auto parts, automotive, aerospace, steel, energy, electronics, chocolate, tobacco, confectionery, textile, and clothing, among others. He is a member of the Foreign Trade Committee of Index Nuevo León and of the Foreign Trade Committee of Comce Noreste. He has participated in consulting projects, compliance procedures before federal authorities, preventive audits, due diligence procedures, tax and customs strategies, training, advice during authority verification powers, all related to foreign trade issues, as well as reconstruction and administration of inventory control of temporary imports, among others. Thank you, Roberto, for being here. I'll turn things over to you now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you also for the invitation. Here with me, it's also Irka López. She's a global trade manager, also at Deloitte, Monterrey. Myself, I'm located also at the office of Monterrey of Deloitte. And let me share my screen. Just a second. It's always a problem with the Zoom bar that doesn't let you click in what you want to click. Okay.
Yes, don't worry. There you go.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Today, Irka and myself, we will be talking about the implications of the USMCA in the global trade between Mexico and Canada. We will be discussing the main issues or the main topics of the USMCA, like a brief summary of the main changes between NAFTA and the USMCA. So let's get started then. Well, first, what we can see here is this chart of the trade between Mexico and Canada. We have it here from the Mexican perspective. The blue line, it's Mexican imports from Canada. The green line, it's Mexican exports to Canada. As we can see, the trade flows have been relatively steady in the last years. I mean, at least from 2010 through 2017, it was relatively steady. We have a small, in general terms, we have a small surplus in the trade balance with Canada. I mean, we export a little bit more of what we import. And we had a small increase in 2018. It was steady through 2019. And then, of course, because of the pandemic, we have a decrease in trade, both imports and both exports to and from Canada. But I believe this is normal. If we see the behavior of the trade balance of most countries, they will show the same decrease both in imports and both in exports. However, in 2020 and 2021 and the next years, we will see an increase again, both in imports and both in exports. Irka, I don't know if you want to make any comment in this slide.
Yes, and basically the main products that we export into Canada are mainly vehicles, machinery and equipment, and some electrical components. So those are the most relevant products that Mexican companies manufacture in order to export it to Canada.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you this. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, we have here Mexican imports from Canada in this in this chart for 2020. We have all the products, And then we have this segregation in chapters of the tariff code. I mean, for import and export, for import, export and customs purposes, for those who doesn't know this, all the products are classified in a series of digits that go from 6 digits through 10 or more digits. When you cross the border, the first digits are equal in all the world, in all the countries for us, for a specific good. So we have here chapter 87, and chapter 87 refers to vehicles and auto parts. And as you can see, that's also not only what Irka mentioned, what's the exports. I will turn to the exports here, sorry. These are the exports from Mexico to Canada. And from the total, we have most part is auto parts and vehicles. In second place, machinery, mechanical appliances, nuclear reactors, boilers, okay? And then electrical machinery and all electrical and electronic products go there. But then we can have here a good idea of what we are exporting the most to Canada. And the imports are kind of similar, because what we import the most is also vehicles and auto parts. And then the second place, it's also for machinery. And then electrical and electronic appliances. All right, so that's in general terms the picture, the behavior of trade between Mexico and Canada. Okay, I'll turn back to the slides. Okay, and what about the main changes in the USMCA? Irka, if you want to continue.
Yeah, sure. So we will go through the main changes in regard to the USMCA. As you know, this new free trade agreement was updated and was subject to many changes. So we will go through the most relevant topics in this matter. The first one would be the termination date and the term of extension. As you know, in the past, the NAFTA didn't have a termination date. It was for indefinite period of time. However, for USMCA purposes, the three parties established that it would be terminated 16 years after the day of its entry into force, unless each party confirms it wishes to continue the agreement for a new term of 16 years. So this means that every 16 years, the treaty would be reviewed by the three parties. And if any of them has any concerns, then probably there would be negotiations and some updates. So basically, that's it. In terms of access to markets, the free trade agreement remains allowing all of the parties to enjoy the benefits of importing without tariffs for originating goods. So this was preserved, which is basically the intention of every free trade agreement in the world, to give the benefit of importing without import duties. Then we have the dispute resolution mechanism, which basically is the chapter 31. In the NAFTA, it was chapter 19. Basically, this is a mechanism that allows to review the definitive compensatory fees imposed by any of the three parties through a binational panel. So this means that any of the parties will be allowed to impose these definitive compensatory fees because they want to, or because they say so. This can be challenged and it can be discussed through a binational panel. So this grants certainty to all of the parties involved. Then we have the Article 32.10, which basically establishes the obligation of informing with 3 months of anticipation of future free trade agreement negotiations with countries that are not market economies. So this is intended, for example, if in the future Mexico wants to celebrate a free trade agreement with China, for example, then they must inform to United States and Canada their intention to celebrate this new free trade agreement. And in terms of agriculture, in this part, the United States was intending to propose a seasonality term, which basically consists in, for example, during the period of February, California is producing oranges, then they were willing to impose import duties on all the oranges that came from Mexico. So that was very convenient for US and very unfortunate for Mexico. So unfortunately, it was discarded. So the seasonality proposal was not passed, and it is not under USMCA.
Yeah, in addition, there are new chapters and new topics included in this trade agreement. I mean, those topics were not important back then in 1994 when NAFTA entered into force. So we now have a chapter 19 of digital commerce, which regulates the commerce of digital products. We will discuss further on this chapter in the next slides. We have a chapter 20 of intellectual property, which provides this renovated legal framework for with improved regulations in terms of intellectual property. We have a chapter 23 in regard to labor, which guarantees compliance with fundamental labor rights, as well as promoting transparency in the application of labor legislation, which I believe it's an important topic, a very important topic. Environment, we have a chapter 24, which provides protection and effective enforcement of environmental laws, as well as enhancing the parties' capacities or capabilities to address trade-related environmental issues. And we have also, in regard to specific rules of origin, this also continues. The tariff shift and regional value content continues. The de minimis changes from 7% to 10%. And well, this is maybe this is very technical, but those are the different ways in which a manufactured product may qualify as USMCA originating. Basically, what we are saying here is that most of the rules of origin that were in the NAFTA are still in the USMCA. Let me change it. All right.
Okay, and as Roberto is mentioning, one of the most relevant changes was in regard to the rules of origin, which basically are the rules per product in order to consider that a manufactured product is USMCA originating, and in order to be granted with the benefit of exempting the import duties at the moment of the import in any of the ports.
Okay, if you allow me, Irka, just to make
Yes.
one comment.
Yes, of course.
The main point of what's the main purpose of a trade agreement? The main purpose is that when you manufacture a good here in Mexico and you export that good to Canada, the trade agreement allows you to get preferential tariff treatment in Canada. What is that? That when you make the importation into Canada, that you don't pay import duties there. And how can you do that? Well, your product that is manufactured in Mexico must qualify as USMCA originating. And how do I do that? Okay, first of all, you need to know the tariff code or HTS code, which is also called the HTS code of your product. All right. Once the product you are manufacturing, and then once you know the HTS code of the product you are manufacturing, you need to know the specific rule of origin. This trade agreement has a section where it mentions all the HTS codes for all the goods. And then what you have to do is to look for your HTS code and to see what's the applicable rule of origin to your product. And it can be two kind of rules of origin. At this point, you don't know which is it. But once you go and see the specific rule of origin, you can see that it can be either of these next two. One may require a change in tariff in tariff classification, which means that you can bring raw materials from China, and if you make a substantial transformation in Mexico and the final product has a different tariff code or tariff classification, as you want to call it, if your raw material has a different tariff code or tariff classification than your finished product, if that's the rule of origin that the trade agreement established for your product, then your product can be considered as USMCA originating. Hey, but all the raw materials came from China. Yes, but the trade agreement for your product allowed to consider it as originating if there is a substantial change in the tariff code, in the tariff classification of your raw material versus your final product. All right, that's one kind of qualification of rule of origin. Yeah. And what's the next? I don't know if you want to comment on regional value content, Irka.
Yeah, basically the second option would be to be required to comply with original value content, which basically means that you need to have certain value of originating raw materials in order to qualify as originating for USMCA purposes. So under this kind of rule of origin, it would not be able to bring all raw materials from China and to still be qualifying as originating from for USMCA purposes.
Yeah, this kind of rule of origin, which is called regional value content, this kind of rule of origin requires you to buy raw materials from Mexico, United States, or Canada. So you can incorporate them in your product and to comply with a certain percentage of regional value content. So those, just for you to know that those are the two basic kinds of rules of origin, and they are the ones that will apply. One of those will apply to your product, to the product that you manufacture and that you may export to Canada. Which one applies? I don't know. You have to check the specific rule of origin for your product in the trade agreement. So, being said that, if you want to continue now with the slide, Irka.
Yes, in terms of these kinds of rules of origin, one of the industries that was mostly changed and renewed was the automotive industry. Basically, under USMCA, all rules of origin were strengthened. So in order to ensure that most of the vehicles that are manufactured in Mexico actually have components from the parties, Mexican, US originating or Canadian originating. So basically the main changes are, one of the main changes is that the regional value content in order to export light vehicles abroad is that they have to comply with a from 62.5% to 75% within the first 3 years of the USMCA in order to be considered as USMCA originating.
Yeah, basically the 62.5% was in NAFTA. So basically what Irka is saying is it changed from 62.5% in NAFTA to 75% now in the USMCA.
Yes, and also additional to that increase in the percentage of regional value content, vehicles are also required to comply with a 70% of steel and aluminum incorporated on light and heavy vehicles must be originating from North America. So this means that if you are manufacturing a vehicle here in Mexico, you need to prove that at least the 70% of the steel and aluminum were originating from US or from Canada or from Mexico. This was a substantial change because many of the manufacturing companies were not complying with these requirements.
Yeah, and the next, I believe, is the most
Relevant.
the most important. Yeah, the
Yes.
most relevant.
Additional to the past two requirements, the vehicle manufacturers have also to comply with a labor value content, which basically means that at least in the manufacture of 40% of light vehicles and 45 in case of pickups, they need to prove that the manufacturing process was carried out with people which wage is 16 US dollars per hour. So as you know, in Mexico, we don't have that kind of wages. So this was intended to move part of the production to US or Canada in order to comply with this labor value content requirement.
Yeah, correct. At least 40% of the vehicle must be manufactured in facilities where they pay that kind of wage, 16 hours per hour, $16 per hour, yeah.
Exactly. And then in general terms for auto parts, they do not have to comply with the 70% of steel and aluminum, nor for the labor value content, but the regional value content was also modified and increased. So basically auto parts are split into three main sections, are split into essential parts, main parts, and complementary parts, depending on the importance of their incorporation into the vehicles. So essential parts were increased up to 75% or 85%. Net cost and transaction value are also two possible methods under which you can calculate the regional value content. So this is more technical once you are carrying out the analysis of qualification of origin, but basically are the two methodologies that exist in order to calculate the regional value content. The specific rule of origin will establish which methodology is allowed for your manufactured product. The main parts were increased to 70% under net cost and 80% under transaction value, and complementary parts were increased to 65% under net cost or 75% under transaction value.
Okay, about the digital commerce, well, very briefly, basically this chapter 19 regulates trade by electronic means and digital products such as computer programs, image, text, video, sound recording, or products that are digitally encoded and can be electronically transmitted. The most important thing is that the second point, none of the parties may impose tariffs or custom charges for import or export of digital products transmitted electronically. So in the last years, there was a lot of doubt, and I received questions from clients and from colleagues in the firm saying that, hey, if I buy a program or a software, what's the import duties I have to pay? I made the download in my computer, and we said no. If it doesn't cross the border, there's no import duties. I mean, import duties is for physical goods. If there's no physical good crossing the border, there's no import duties. And basically, this inclusion or this text of chapter 19 comes to confirm what we were saying about that. I mean, what they are saying is that none of the parties may impose import duties for digital products that are transmitted electronically. All right. You may be able to charge VAT fees or other charges, but not import duties. All right. I mean, we have a lot of other things here in this chapter. There must be equal treatment upon digital products among the parties. Avoid unnecessary regulatory loads. Adopt and keep effective and transparent measures to protect consumers. among others. But I guess that the main point is that no import duties can be applied to digital products. And now we will discuss about the certification of origin. When you make the analysis of qualification of origin of your finished product, and once you review the rule of origin and you saw that your product qualifies as originating, then you must prepare a certification of origin, which is a document with all the necessary information. So your Canadian counterpart, when you export from Mexico to Canada, the Canadian importer may apply preferential duty rates there with this certification of origin.
So basically, this certification of origin is designed and has nine fields that should be considered. It was changed from the NAFTA certificate of origin to the new USMCA certificate of origin. Basically, the main change is that we don't have a specific format. It is like more flexible but less clear, because it can be done through a letter by the exporter here in Mexico or the manufacturer, as long as it complies with the 9 fields that it should be considered. It also can be included as part of the commercial invoice or in any other document that is attached to the export pedimento. The importers and exporters or producers can issue the certificate of origin. Basically, the main changing here are that under NAFTA, importers were not allowed to expedite this certificate of origin, only exporters or producers. And under USMCA, it is intended that importers may also elaborate their own certification of origin. In the case of Mexico, it is important to consider that this would enter into force after 3.5 years from the USMCA entered into force. So we don't suggest this that much, because you as importer, in case of an audit from customs or tax authorities, it might be difficult to support the fact that the goods are actually originating, because on their audits they request several data such as the cost of the raw materials, the origins, among other information that you as a client may be difficult to have from your supplier. The certificate can also be filled out and sent electronically, and it also can be signed electronic or with digital signature. And if applicable, clients may request different data according to each product. And in the next slide, in here, these are the 9 fields I was talking about. This is the minimum information, the elements that all certification of origins should include. Basically, we have the certifier of origin, the producer, which is the party that is manufacturing the goods to be exported, the origin criteria, which basically is the rule of origin applicable under USMCA purposes, the certifier, which is the issuer of the certification of origin, the importer, the period that covers the certification of origin. This can cover up to 12 months this can be valid for up to 12 months. The exporter, the description and classification of the goods that are covered under the certification of origin, and finally the authorized signature and date of signature.
Yeah, basically the main idea here for you is that take into consideration that if you export goods to Canada, then if the products, number one, you must make an analysis of qualification of origin to see if your product qualifies as USMCA originating. And once you verify that your product qualifies as originating, then the second step is that for you to get benefit at the moment of the import in Canada, you as exporter from Mexico must prepare a certification of origin under the USMCA. And that certification of origin, as opposed to NAFTA, where you had this specific format, in this case, you don't have that format. It is more flexible as long as you include all this information. You will prepare the certification of origin. You will send it to your counterpart in Canada, to the importer of record in Canada. So the importer of record in Canada, using this certification of origin, will be able to exempt import duties there in Canada. That's the main, and I believe this is the essence of every trade agreement. The essence is that you don't pay import duties for goods that qualify as originating for that trade agreement. And then we have some operational recommendations. Some of them may apply to your case, some of them may not. These operational recommendations came due to the change from NAFTA to USMCA. So they are given on that perspective. So in the case of tariff preferences, you must issue the new certification of origin instead of the NAFTA certificate of origin, and you must request certification of origin from suppliers. If you are buying raw materials or components for the manufacturing of your product, then you must request the certification of origin to your suppliers. You want to know if the goods they are selling you, if the raw materials or components they are providing you, you want to know if they qualify as originating, because that will be part of your final product. All right. Business operation. You may need, depending on the company and the operation, but you may need training for origin compliance. You must be sure that you or your team understands the regulations and provisions for making the analysis of qualification of origin of your products. And then you must carry out this analysis of qualification of origin. And in the next one, well, I will focus on technological solutions. You must evaluate the current way in which the qualification of origin has been made. Identify if you have all the elements to certify the origin. Sometimes you don't have certainty, or you don't have all the elements to make the corresponding analysis or to certify the origin of your product. And you must evaluate, and this applies in big companies with constant changes of suppliers and countries of origin of components or parts, but it is to evaluate having a technological solution for the qualification of origin and compliance with the USMCA. I mean, the analysis of qualification of origin, if I will make the analysis only for one product, I can do that in Excel, and it's not a big deal. But if you have 10,000 part numbers with different suppliers, different components, different costs, and different countries of origin, which are changing from day to day, so it is very complicated to make a one-time analysis in Excel. You need a more sophisticated tool to make this analysis on a continuous basis, okay? Okay, and that's it from our side. If you have any questions, please, we will be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you so much, Roberto and Irka, for your very informative presentation. I do have some questions from the audience. Let me just read to you the first one for whoever of you wants to answer. What's the main difference between the certification of origin of NAFTA and the USMCA?
If you want to comment, Irka?
Yeah, sure. Under NAFTA, there wasn't a specific format. Under USMCA, we don't have a specific format. We only have the specific information that it should contain, but it isn't required to be done in a certain type of format. That's the one of the main changes. And also another main change is that importers are allowed to expedite the certification of origin under USMCA. Under NAFTA, it was not possible to do that.
Yeah, and I guess this, as Irka mentioned, this can become a problem because when Mexican importers are allowed to do that, which will be within 2.5 years from now, right?
3.5. Oh yeah, yes.
2.5 from now, the Mexican importer will be allowed to prepare the certification of origin instead of the exporter or instead of the producer in Canada or the US. It could be the Mexican importer, and this could be very problematic and dangerous for the company if the Mexican importer doesn't have the corresponding support. And this applies also for the Canadian and US importer, because they can do it now. The restriction of 2.5 years from now is for Mexico, but a Canadian importer or a US importer today, they can sign a certification of origin of goods that are coming from Mexico or from the US or Canada. But that's a little bit dangerous because most of times importers don't have all the information required to support the qualification of origin. But okay, but that's the point.
Thank you so much, Roberto and Irka. I have a second question here. It says, which are the main changes in the rules of origin in the automotive sector versus NAFTA?
Well, in that case, I guess the main change is that in NAFTA, we had the normal rule of origin, which was regional value content. I mean, the NAFTA requested that at least 62.5% of the vehicle was made of parts of the US, Canada, or Mexico. That's it. The rest, which is the 37.5%, those could be Chinese components or from any other country. Today, what they said is, okay, it won't be 62.5, it will be 75. I mean, that's the first change. And you say, okay, it's an increase. They want more content from the region to promote more trade among the region, and that's okay. But then they said, okay, in addition to that increase, we also want that 70% of the steel and aluminum comes from the region, and also that at least 40% of the value of the vehicle becomes from facilities where you pay $16 per hour. So basically what they wanted to say with other words is that at least 40% of the vehicle must be manufactured in Canada or the US. With other words, but that's the point. That was the main change.
Okay, thank you, Roberto. And I have another question here. What is the percentage of Mexico's exports represents the exports to Canada?
Well, it is relatively low compared with the whole amount of exportations from Mexico. In the case of Canada, the exports to Canada represents 2.5% of total Mexican exports. Around 80%, just for you to have an idea, around 80% of Mexican exports go to the US, and the rest is divided in many countries. The second, I mean, the first destination is the US with 80%. The second destination is Canada with 2.5%.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't have any more questions. So thank you again, Roberto and Irka, for all the information you shared with us today. It was a pleasure to have you both in this panel and to learn about the USMCA implications. On the screen, you have the emails from Roberto and Irka, and I will post your diploma as a recognition for attending our event, which will be sent to you both via email at the end of this day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.